Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Storytime Clinic. And I am incredibly excited today to be introducing a wonderful, wonderful guest, Dr. Terri Major-Kincade. Dr. Kincade, or Dr. Terri, aka Dr. Boo, as she's affectionately called, is a double board certified neonatologist and pediatrician who has been in practice for over 20 years. She is a nationally acclaimed speaker. She's an author, she's a health equity advocate, and she has a special interest in perinatal health disparities, neonatal palliative care, and physician parent communication. We are going to be talking today about her first children's book called Big Sis Visits the NICU. And we're going to hear all about her journey and how she got started on this and how she came to the point of writing this book. So I'm really, really excited to welcome you on the show today, Dr. Terri. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we're going to dig a little bit into your bio here because I'm very curious about where the name Dr. Boo came from. Break that down for us.
um, I'm from Louisiana originally, and we call everybody Boo. So my
Uh-huh.
husband's the original Boo, of course. But if you have met
Uh-huh.
me, if I've ever taken care of your child or met you, at some point I was calling you Boo. I called your baby Boo. I call all my
Uh-huh.
colleagues Boo. And so it is just really a term of endearment for people in our circle in Louisiana, and I've just carried it through my entire life. And for me, if I'm at a job, I know it's a full circle moment if my coworker comes in and says, "Hey, boo," they finally got it.
I love it. I love it. So it's a community of boos around you.
Community of boos, but not boo boo. One
Oh,
time, one of
oh
my coworkers
no.
came in and said,
Oh
"Hey,
no,
boo
no,
boo." I'm
no.
like, "That's it's not. No, you're doing too
Just a
much."
singular boo. Got it.
Just a singular boo. Exactly.
Got it, got it. Now, I also introduced you as a pediatrician and a neonatologist. So, for anyone in the audience who's listening and who doesn't know what a neonatologist is, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Neonatologists are pediatricians who have received extra training to care for premature babies as well as very sick babies. And I always like to add that caveat because people usually go, "Oh, neos, they take care of the preemies." But half the babies in the NICU are not that premature. They're actually not even that small. So we take care of premature babies as
Mm-hmm.
well as any baby that is sick after delivery or who has something that requires surgery. They may even go home, have jaundice, have to come back. So if you're a baby and you require care in an intensive care unit, you're being cared for by a neonatologist. And I
Mm-hmm.
usually just say preemie doc because neonatologist is a long word. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's kind of hard to
Mm-hmm.
get out sometimes. So we take care of the preemies and any sick babies.
Wonderful. And how did you come to choosing this path? How did you come to wanting to be a preemie doc?
Yeah, I have known since I was 5 years old that I wanted to be the kind of doctor that took care of the babies that could fit in the palm of your hand, the babies that were in the plastic boxes. My sister was born in 1968 and she was 3 months early. And so that was my first exposure to a baby being born really early and somebody being really tiny. And my parents would describe how she could fit in their hand, how she was in a plastic box, how when she came home, she was small enough that she could actually fit in a shoebox.
Mm.
And so I was fascinated by that. And I didn't find out till later that the pediatricians that took care of those babies were called neonatologists.
Uh-huh.
And so once I found that out, I'm like, yep, that's what I want to do. I want to take care of the babies that can fit in your hand. And so even though I've been doing this 20 years, it just never gets old being in the delivery room and watching a human that can fit in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
kicking, screaming, moving around. I mean, it's just an amazing feeling. So I say my sister's the first preemie that I ever took care of,
Uh-huh.
even though we're only a we're only 9 months apart. But I
Uh-huh.
still say she's the first preemie I ever took care of. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I was gonna ask you whether you ever, had the opportunity to visit her in the NICU, but if you were just a little bit older, then you probably wouldn't have been
No,
part of
because she
that
came. Her due
experience.
date was, yeah, I was born in October. My sister was born in July the
Mm-hmm.
following year, but she was due in October.
Got it. Got it.
So I was still a baby. But I love that question because at the time that my sister was born, families were not allowed in the neonatal intensive care unit. You
Oh
would come
wow.
and watch your baby through a window, just like people
Oh, so not
used to
even
watch.
your parents. Hmm.
No, so family visitation in the NICU came much later. So we brought in back then they brought you in to give you the hard news
Mm.
if the baby wasn't doing well, but just to come in and sit and hold
Mm.
and encourage family visiting the way we do now.
Mm-hmm.
That was not something we did then. And my parents would come on Sundays
Yeah.
on the weekends and visit my sister.
Oh.
And then they came one weekend and they were like, okay, she's ready to go home.
Oh man.
So so my parents look at me like, well, I don't understand what the big deal is. They just told us one day we could take her home and we
And
did.
you
I'm like,
did.
so, and she's doing great today. I
Uh-huh.
mean, my sister's doing really
Oh, that's so
wonderful, but
good
she
to
was born
hear.
at a time
Mm-hmm.
where it was really hard to beat those odds. So,
Yeah.
she's a miracle. And I think about my parents every time I'm in the NICU. I think about my sister every time I'm in the NICU. So,
Yeah, that's incredible to have that, that piece of it, the family background, you get to understand or at least, consider a bit more what it feels
hmm
like for a family in that
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and my parents were in Baton Rouge. My sister was in New Orleans, so more than an hour away.
Mm,
So families, a lot of preemies have to be transported in, and they're separated from their
mhm.
parents, separated from their whole family until
Yeah.
the family can actually come visit. And so I carry that with me whenever I meet a family that's been transported in, and sometimes it's many weeks before a parent may actually get to see their baby if they
Hmm.
were life flighted in.
Mm, mhm. Mhm. So in the NICUs now, you talked about we have family visitation and parental visitation.
hmm
How do we incorporate that? What are the steps that we're doing to get families um, to be able to see their kids a bit earlier or to be able to bond with their kids a little bit earlier?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research done around family centered NICU care. I think when we first started advancing the field of neonatology, our biggest concern was these babies are really little. Any touch is stressful. Anybody around them is stressful. Any noise is stressful. So that includes you, family, get
Whole
out.
lot of
You know,
stress.
and so we had rules, but we've since learned how important it is to continue that maternal infant bonding, that
Mhm.
paternal infant bonding, parent infant bonding,
Mhm.
and actually babies who have that attachment, they do better in terms of their health comes. They gain weight sooner. We have better breastfeeding rates. They have lower rates of infection.
Mhm.
Parents have less post traumatic stress
Mm.
because the NICU environment is very triggering. So that whole field of family centered care is the gold standard now for every NICU. And I've practiced in 4 states, more than 30 NICUs.
Wow.
And it's one thing I've noticed now that's very important is in the delivery room, no matter how small a baby is, even less than a pound,
Mm.
as soon as that baby's born, we take that baby to mom's bedside. Many of my NICUs, they take a picture right then, sometimes with the parent's cell phone. It may be the only picture they get without a bunch of tubes and
Mm.
wires. Unfortunately, for some families, it may be the only time they even see their child, the healthiest they're going to be
Mm.
for a long time.
Mm.
So I love that even if they have to get a breathing tube, we take that baby over. If they are in the incubator, we will that to the parents so
Mhm.
that they can see, touch, be
Yeah.
with their baby.
Yeah.
We take the other parent with us to the NICU.
Mhm.
Mom still be in the delivery room, but we take the other parent with us
Mhm.
into the intensive care unit, the other partner, so that they can be there. They can see where their baby's going to be.
Yeah.
We explain the procedures. We used to be like, you know what, we'll let you guys know in 2 3 hours. Okay,
Yeah.
we got too much going on,
Yeah.
but we try to bring them now, and so that's important. Prior to COVID, most NICUs had really broadened their visitation
Mhm.
requirements. So allowing children, siblings to come in as long as they got vaccinations.
Mhm.
I was in a NICU where we had sibling Sundays. So every
Oh.
Sunday, siblings could come in from 2 to 5.
Mhm.
If you're at a children's hospital, we have Child Life available. to speak with siblings about the tubing. They may see what's going on with their little brother or little sister to kind of prepare them, see a model of a doll
Mhm.
that has those things. We have parent support groups
Mm.
where we can come in and all parents who are in the NICU at the same time can talk to each other about what they're going through.
Yeah.
I would say one of the most favorite things I saw that we did for parents is I worked in a NICU where we had a date night for the parents once a month,
Oh,
and our NICU
wow.
nurses, the NICU nurses actually, it was in the physician dining,
Mhm.
and the chef for the physicians won the first Saturday of every month.
Mhm.
They would come that evening. They would set up the dining room, the little tablecloth and
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
flowers on the table,
Mhm.
cook for the families, and the NICU nurses wore like the special, like the chef aprons
Oh
and
my
stuff, and serve the
gosh.
families.
Oh.
And it was like from 6 to 8, and it was
Mhm.
just like, okay, we know it's a lot going on in here, but today it's just for you guys. It's
Oh,
just
I
for you
love
guys.
that idea.
And
I
I just
love
thought
it.
that was, I mean, it was so amazing, so
Yeah.
amazing. But now
Yeah.
they're like scrapbook groups, and they make
Yeah.
charm bracelets together, and they journal together. And, it's really, really, really nice to see and seeing more involvement of our male parents,
Yeah.
being more inclusive in terms of making sure they have a seat at a table at the table and can share.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, at least prior to COVID, I would say the other biggest change I saw was many NICUs stopped having visitation hours
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
parents because it
Mhm.
was 24 hours. Because
Okay.
parents aren't, guess what? Parents aren't visitors.
Mhm.
They're part of the
Mhm.
healthcare team.
Mhm.
So
That's
you can
right.
come in whenever you want.
Yeah.
And so not every NICU does that, but I've worked in a lot of NICU now that has no fixed visitation hours for families,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is really important.
Yeah. Oh wow. I think those are just such wonderful, wonderful ideas for families because I mean, the NICU can be so stressful, as you mentioned,
So stressful.
and I think people come into a birth, like no one plans for a child that goes to the
Exactly.
NICU.
Oh
People
my
come
gosh.
in with
Exactly.
all sorts of expectations of how things are going to go, of this moment they're
Yes.
going to share with their child, and that gets
Yes.
taken away from a lot of people. So I think it's beautiful when we're able to do something to restore some form of, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. I tell people every day, they ask me how to summarize my job, and I said, I meet somebody every day who wasn't planning to meet me and is not happy to meet me
Mm-hmm.
because no one wakes up and plans to be in the NICU. And
Yeah.
if you actually haven't had a baby in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, you don't even know anything about this whole other world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but every day I know I'm meeting somebody who's like, you know what? I wasn't trying to meet you today.
Yeah.
It's like, I understand, boo. I understand, but
You
we're here
see,
now.
and then
Let's roll with
eventually
it.
they come around to calling you Dr. Boo, and
Exactly. I'm like, you know what, boo? I get it. I didn't want to meet me today either, but we here.
that's right. So now, you mentioned that we are not just expanding this, visitation and this inclusion for parents. We're talking about siblings as well.
Yes,
And I
yes.
love, 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 your book. Let's talk about that a little bit. Big
Yay!
Sis Visits the NICU. You guys can see it in the background behind her, but if
Big
you
Sis
can,
visits the
it's right
NICU.
here, written by Dr.
Yay!
Terri Major-Kincade. Um,
Yay!
and I just love the idea at the beginning of this book. I'm going to let you talk about it, but I love the idea at the beginning of this book, the way it gets laid out is that parents are not the only ones that are expecting this baby, this
Yes.
child, and preparing for it. Siblings, older siblings are really involved in that. Some of them have been
Yeah.
looking forward to this for a really long time. And so when
Yeah.
something disrupts what they have been expecting as well, they get disappointed. They have feelings about that. And so I
Yeah.
loved, what this book is able to do in terms of just including the sibling into this different process. So why don't you tell us about how you came to writing Big Sis Visits the NICU?
Thank you so much for giving space for this book. This book has been a dream in my heart um, almost 8 years. And I want to say it was inspired by something a family said to me. And it was a family that said this at a funeral. And I remembered this. And we had taken care of a preemie who had become very sick and unfortunately had died over Christmas. Prior to him becoming very sick, his parents had repeatedly asked, could his sister come and visit? She
Mm,
was 3.
mm,
At the time, the cutoff for the NICU was to visit was 12.
mm,
And we kept saying, when he gets better, she'll be able to visit. When he gets better, hopefully she'll be able to visit.
Yeah.
We'll try to like bring him to the window, and we'll try to work that out. And unfortunately, he got sick really, really quickly,
Mm,
and his sister never got to visit him.
mm,
And so the first time his sister saw him in in person was after he had already passed. She had, of
mm.
course, seen pictures of him,
Yeah.
but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so at the funeral, his mother literally said she thanked the all the NICU staff for the wonderful care that her child had received. She understood her child had gotten an infection that we hadn't been able to prevent. She said, but if I would have one suggestion for you guys, you really need to figure out a way for siblings to visit their siblings before they die.
Mm,
Before they die. If you
mhm,
have a child that's old enough to know
mhm,
that they have a baby brother or baby sister in the hospital, she said, you guys need to figure that out. I don't can't tell you how to do it, but you guys
mhm,
need to figure that out because
mhm.
it makes a really, really big difference. And she said that was her one of her really big regrets,
Yeah.
that her daughter didn't get to meet her. And I was like, wow, because I never really thought about the people at home who are also waiting for this baby to come home
Yeah.
because you're so entrenched with the parents.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward to now, family centered care has really, really grown. We got a little bump with COVID, so shut down all visitation. But before that, most NICUs were letting pay, siblings come in that were at least 12 and up, and many had gone down to 5 and up if they had their
Mm,
vaccinations from school and
mhm,
didn't have a fever. And that's awesome. And many NICUs now have cameras in the NICU where
mhm,
you can FaceTime with the sibling.
mhm.
And again, as I mentioned, the child life can work with them. But I never forgot what that mom said. So I
Yeah.
started writing the book then.
Mhm.
And so to me, this book is the way every NICU hopefully will eventually be.
Yeah.
It'll eventually be that way. We plan it out. The big sis or big brother is coming. We have somebody rather than meet them, and they get to see everything and
Uh-huh.
understand everything,
Uh-huh.
because they've been helping decorate the room. And I'm a big sister, and we take pride in it. I always wanted a big brother. I don't have one, but always wanted one. Have a baby brother. But anyway, so for me, it's my dream for every NICU, and just to remind us that the whole family is going through this experience: the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, and often the siblings who have been gotten so excited about getting ready to meet their brother or sister. So
Yes, 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 yes. Well, the book I think is beautiful. So it is a picture book, a short picture book, with a main character who's very excited to become a big sister. She's probably about 5 or 6 years old.
yeah.
And we can see her preparing just like her parents are preparing. We can see her, helping to get the room ready. And she has all these ideas in her head of what the baby's going to be able to do when he comes out and whatnot. And then the baby ends up coming a bit early, and she gets told that baby's not going to be able to come home. And so she ends up
Yeah.
going to the hospital, meeting her parents there, and meeting Dr. Terri there. So Dr. Terri, tell us a little bit about going to visit a NICU for the first time. I will say, even for me, so um I will share here that my family had the privilege of having Dr. Terri take care of one of our babies when he needed to be in the NICU. And I remember going to visit, and at that time I was younger. I was probably in my first year of medical school. So this is before I did any clinicals or anything. And this was like my first going into a NICU for the first time. And like you said, seeing these really, really tiny babies who could fit in the palm of your hand for the first time. And there's tubing, there's wires, there's IVs, there's monitors, there's beeping, lots of things
Yes.
happening at once. It is a little bit scary. It's a little bit,
Yeah.
you don't quite know what to do in there. You don't want to touch anything.
Exactly. Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about what Dr. Terry does to kind of prepare Big Sis in this book.
So, one of the ways I tried to pattern the book is often when we meet parents, just like you described, the NICU, even though it's home for me, it's sensory overload and it's not home for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're not a big sis or a big brother or kid, if you're an adult, even if you have to go there and see your child every day, it can be a very triggering and overwhelming sensory experience. So when we meet parents, often we give them, if I meet you before you're having your baby and we're concerned your baby may be in the NICU, we offer a tour of the NICU,
Okay.
which sometimes parents go, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to tour because I'm not going to speak that over my child. I don't want to
Mhm.
be there."
Mhm.
And then other people are like, you know what? Let me just see. Hopefully, we won't have to come here, but let me just see.
Mhm.
And so, what you see in the beginning, where you're washing your hands and you're getting ready and you're at the front desk, that's the same way we kind of bring parents in to kind of like show the lay of the land,
Mhm.
explain why germs are bad and they're
Mhm.
even more bad for our preemies. So this is a big deal.
Mhm.
And then you point to the plastic houses and you acknowledge, okay, these beds look a little different than
Mhm.
the other beds.
Mhm.
And then you acknowledge the noises and the alarms. And I imagine, just like Nurse Lynn in the book, just welcoming Big Sis over, saying, "Hey, come over. Let me show you. Let me show you everything."
Mhm.
I think people have to get over the lay of the land first, the way the beds look, the noises,
Mhm.
and that the humans are so tiny.
Mhm.
And then we look at the babies. So you're thinking, a normal baby sitting up playing, but this baby may have an IV. This baby most often has a tube in their nose or
Mhm.
their mouth.
Mhm.
This baby often may have a breathing tube or oxygen on their nose.
Mhm.
So the baby in the book is a little older, so I didn't have the baby intubated or on a ventilator, but I did have oxygen. I think it's important to see that tube in the nose. And
Mhm.
one of the comments I got about the book was like, "Hey, that tube looks so big." I'm like, but to a kid, it probably does look like that, like a big fire hose coming
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
your nose. Like to us, it looks normal, but like to other people, that don't look normal.
Yes.
And so that's why we intentionally made the tube look so big. But that's like the most common comment I get, like, "Oh my
Really?
God, that tube is like really," people like, "Did you really mean to make it that big?" And so just being able to, and then even the little heart on the chest that monitors the temperature and making sure we go through each step. And it's the same thing we do with, we are doing it through Little Sis, but when, as a parent, when you first come to the NICU,
Mhm.
you have to learn that too. Well, what are the wires? What
Mhm.
is the beep? What is the heart? Why
Mhm.
why do you have that in the nose? How long will we need the IV? So,
Mhm.
and like you said, it's scary to touch anything, let alone your child. We'll
Mhm.
say touch the finger, and parents are like, "No, not today. I think I'll wait." And so that's why I really wanted her to be able to touch the finger. So that's the way I imagine it. And also, at least today, if you're at a children's hospital, we can coordinate with Child Life and they can show them a model of a doll about the size of
Good.
their brother or sister.
Mhm.
And that doll would have an IV, would have the oxygen, would
Mhm.
have the NG tube, just to kind of prepare them. So,
Yeah.
um, to get the sensory overload first and then what they will see.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I
And they get
think
excited.
mhm.
Those
that's
ba-
that's
those kids are excited.
that's a great idea just to have because I mean kids like you said they'll be excited they'll be curious they're going to be
Yeah.
asking all these questions anyway
Yeah.
so sometimes it's
Yes.
good to just get all those questions answered and then
Yeah.
when they get in there and see the baby they're a little bit more comfortable they kind of know what
Correct.
to expect in that situation.
Correct. Yeah, I think you definitely. I'm so glad you asked for your listeners. I mean, even if you're not at a children's hospital, most NICUs have a social worker or a NICU family navigator, a NICU support group, a family advocate who can help you prepare for that visit. I do think
Hmm.
it's really important to be able to explain to the child, if they are cleared to come to visit, "Hey, we're going to go see your brother or sister. Remember, they're really little. We want to be quiet." That's why in the book I'm like, "Shh," because we're always like, kind of, it's noisy enough without bringing in the other noise, but explaining to them,
Yeah.
this is going to help them eat. You may see this here, you may see that there,
Hmm.
so that they don't have too much of it. If they're younger, if they're older, it's likely that they've seen all that in the pictures and
Hmm.
or recognize that. But sometimes the younger kids, it's still an imaginative age. They saw the
Hmm.
picture, but they want to see the baby. And so have to kind of explain the difference.
Yeah, yeah. And I love you have the part in the book where as you mentioned you Big Sis kind of grabs or puts her hand in for baby brother to grab his finger and it's like a little
Yeah.
bonding moment that she takes that back with her
Yes.
and she talks about it and she's treasuring that. Do
Yes.
you think that
And
there is
parents do too. I
yep.
think parents who read it, they'll see themselves in the kid. Because for me, my most favorite part in the NICU is if you see a parent, they walk in, their eyes are big. They're like, "I'm here to see the baby." That's the baby? Like,
Mhm.
that's the baby? And we're like, "You can touch." And then when they put their finger in there, even if your baby's 24 weeks and only weighs a pound, they will still grab your finger. Even if your wedding ring fits up their whole arm, they will grab it. And
Yeah.
just the magic and awe
Mhm.
when they get that connection,
Mhm. Mhm.
those kids and the parents, it's the same feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sure I would imagine that this helps with bonding when they get home as well, if they've
Hmm.
been able to do this along the way.
Yes, yes, we've that's something we've also learned is that the earlier we normalize the touching and care of the infant, integrating families as part of our care team. They're not visitors; they're
Mhm.
part of the care team. They're our most important part of the care team,
Mhm.
and they're the experts in their child.
Mm.
And so, normalizing that from the very beginning, they're the only ones who are most likely going to be there almost every day. I mean, we
Yep.
work shifts and we have days off.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, we pass on reports to each other, but I mean, I value the fact that they're the continuity piece for their child. And so normalizing the care, like some hospitals call them care times or touch times, but having the family be familiar with that so they get comfortable changing the diaper, taking the temperature,
Mhm.
that's very empowering for a
Yeah.
parent.
Yep. Yep. Wonderful. Wonderful. So for parents who are in this environment for the first time, although you mentioned
Yeah.
that they are going to be the experts on their child's care, some people may feel a bit intimidated in that environment. And I know that one
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
your passions is improving communication between physicians and
Mm-hmm.
patients or parents. What kind of advice would you have for parents in that situation? How to communicate with the care team in a way that really establishes that they do want to be involved, and they want to be part of that team, and they want their voice to be
Mm-hmm.
heard.
Yeah. Great question. So I think one of the lovely things about neonatology, what I always explain, because this field is really young. So I mentioned my sister was born in 1968. She was born a couple of years after President Kennedy lost his son to prematurity, and he lost his son to prematurity because neonatal intensive care wasn't a standardized field in the United States at the time. We didn't have a standardized care, and so the field is very young. I mean,
Mhm.
50 plus years,
Mhm.
neonatology is still growing. So, one
Mhm.
of the things with family centered care is we now have patient centered rounds.
Mhm.
And so, many times in the NICU, or even if you have a loved one that's in another part of the hospital, you can be present at rounds. It used to be y'all need to come in when we're done with rounds. We're rounding from 10 to 12. Parents can come in at 12:30. We don't want y'all in here for rounds
Mhm.
because y'all gonna slow rounds down and be asking too many questions. And so now it's just so exciting to have a family be present at rounds. They can hear the care plan, they
Mhm.
can hear our rationale
Mhm.
for the care plan, and it can empower them to ask more questions. Whereas before, if you just kind of summarize everything and I see you and I go, "Oh, your baby's stable. Do you have any questions?" Well, I don't know if I have any questions or not. Well, what's going I
You didn't tell me
mean,
anything.
you didn't tell me nothing. I mean, like, how am I supposed to know? I mean, I got a lot of questions. I'm still
Uh-huh.
scared. But since you said everything's fine, I'm like, what am I supposed to say?
Mhm.
And so I think if families can, obviously, families have to go back to work. They may have other children at home.
Mhm.
A lot of NICUs, you can like phone in during the rounds as well,
Okay.
hospitals. But if they can attend even the patient centered, family centered rounds the once a week and get the lay of the land, I think that kind of helps them. And obviously, like you mentioned, they're not going to be experts at the beginning, and they're not. And the intent is not for them to get medical expertise, but they do know, you know what? I'm here every day with Johnny. And when Johnny does this, every time he did this before, he had an infection. Could you please check again?
Mhm. Mhm.
The last time his oxygen went up, it was XYZ. Can somebody please check?
Mhm.
The last time he did that, this is what, are we concerned about this? Okay, we're not, then okay. So I
Mhm.
encourage all families just to start keeping a journal.
Mhm.
One side of the journal,
Mhm.
they can write whatever the plans were for the day, the changes.
Mhm.
The other side, any question they may have. There's no question that's like people say there's no such thing as a stupid question, and there's no question that's not a valid question.
Mhm.
Ask every question you have. It could be like, is this rational? Is it okay that he's sleeping like that?
Yeah.
When he kicks his foot, should I be worried? No, you shouldn't be worried. Maybe you should. So if he spits up green stuff, people ask you about the color of the poop. Parents have all types of questions. So
Mhm.
one side, I tell parents every day, write on one side whatever your understanding of the plan for the day, and why.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, any questions you may have,
Yeah.
because you may come at night and then nobody's there. Your main care provider may not be there,
Yeah.
and so you want to write it down. They may not have an answer, but the next day,
Mhm.
because you may forget, you can say, you know what, I had a question about this last night, or I got something in the mail about this test. Could you guys tell me about that? Don't. My biggest advice for families is, do not wait for the team to always bring it to you, because the team is always going to bring the stuff that we're most concerned about.
Mm. Mhm.
And underneath that, we don't bring the stuff that we're concerned about, but not as concerned about, because we don't want to stress you out.
Mhm.
And so, like, when I'm talking to a family and they ask me a question, I'll be like, oh, great, they didn't really ask me the one I'm sorry. So I always tell parents, when you get your update from the medical team, you need to always say, now, is there anything you're concerned about that we didn't address today, that we
Uh-huh.
need, that we need to be watching?
Uh-huh.
Because when people ask me, I be like, oh Lord, now I gotta talk about this. And so, and
That's good. That's
and
good.
parents know to kind of, I mean, that's the best question. Is there anything else that we need, that we're looking ahead to, that we're concerned about, that we didn't discuss today?
Mhm.
I don't know everything. Is there anything else that that you think we should talk about?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
let them tell you.
That's good.
And so, and maybe there's not, but I mean, maybe there is,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, I I will always just tell them, next them if it's anything else, and then don't be afraid, in terms of finding your voice. Don't be afraid if there are a lot of tests. There have been a lot of providers. Some hospitals, the doctors or practitioners may change every 3 4 days. You
Mm.
may feel lost.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to just say, you know what, I'm really concerned about the number of tests and change. Can we have a family meeting? I work at some hospitals where we have a family meeting once a month,
Mm.
because that's a great time to summarize where we are
Yeah.
and where we're going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
families should know that, really, in a lot of hospitals, that's standard of care now. Even if you're not at the meeting, we're summarizing the cumulative care once a month. So you
Mhm.
might as well be there.
Mm. Mm.
And so I would ask them for that as well.
Okay. Okay. These are very good tips. Very good insider
Yeah.
tips. For sure. For
Anything
sure.
else we need to talk about? And always ask this too: if this doesn't work, what are your next steps?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That kind of prepares
Because
you
you
for
want to
what's
know.
coming. Mhm. Mhm.
Ex- oh my gosh, prepare. And because you mentioned a lot of anxiety that families may have, and a lot of your anxiety is related to the unknown.
Mhm.
On the other hand, you want to know the kind of communicator you are. Some people don't want a lot of information. They just want to know, hey, what's the plan for today?
Mhm.
I can't really worry about the ultrasound you're going to do next month. Like, what's
Mhm.
the plan for today?
Mhm. Mhm.
And other families, like, you know what? I want to know XYZ, and I want to know X2, Y2, and Z2 as well. And so you need to,
The whole plan.
and exactly.
Yeah.
So some people are in the moment. Some people like to plan as they go. Some people want to know the worst case scenario just in case it happens. Other people don't. So I think we, as healthcare providers, it's incumbent upon us to make sure we know how our families like to receive information,
Mhm. Mhm.
and give them the information the best way.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, healthcare providers,
Yes. We
after you're
need tips
talking to
too.
families, we need tips too. After you've talked to any family, we in general talk too much and give too much information without pause.
Mm.
That's why when we say, do you have any questions, the families are looking at us like, you've been talking 20 minutes. I don't really know if I have one. So after we finish, we can say, after we have shared, we need to give space for pause
Mhm.
so that they can process what you just shared.
Mm.
I'm concerned that the heart ultrasound has gotten a little worse. We may have to do medicine or surgery for this heart problem.
Mhm.
Do you have any questions about that? Pause. And then after the family says whatever they say, we as the healthcare provider should also say, is there anything else you're worried about? Or what else is worrying you?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
just keep saying what else
Yeah.
until they got all, there's always a what else.
Yep. Yep.
And so just say, well, what is anything else concerning you? Address that. What else? What else can we talk about today?
Yep.
What else can we talk about today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Your last what else may be, you know what? His brother's been asking a lot of questions, and we want to know, is at any point is his brother going to be able to visit the NICU?
Mhm.
You never know what you're going to get
Mhm.
after the what else questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, it's usually the third what else that's the thing that's really scaring the family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I
Make time
think
to sit there in that
I
space.
like that because when you keep coming back to it, I think that kind of reassures them it is actually okay
Yes,
to bring something else up. Because a
it's
lot of times
okay.
people get worried about, am I taking too much of their time, you know?
Yes, yes,
And so just
yes.
this continuing to check in and check in and check in, it makes
Check
people
in
feel
and
that.
sit down. Sit down. Don't stand in the door talking about y'all got any more questions.
Yes.
No, they see you trying to run out the door like right now. I mean, like sit down. And so, I mean, medical studies show that if you just sit down, even if you spent the same amount of time in the room, patients feel like you spent more time with them
Mm-hmm.
because you sat down as opposed to standing in the door looking down at them, daring them
Mm-hmm.
to ask you another question.
Yeah. Yes. That is so true. That is so true. Oh my goodness. So, Dr. Terry, sometimes babies can be in the NICU for a very, very long time.
Oh my
So you
gosh.
have a
Mm-hmm.
mom who's maybe been pregnant for 7 months. She had a baby, and then the baby ends up being in the NICU for 7 or 8 months. It doesn't happen to everyone, but for some complicated cases, you can have a situation like that.
Yeah.
How do you prepare families for actually taking on care themselves after you guys have been taking care of the baby for so long?
Right. So that's one of the big tenets for family centered care, especially for our chronic NICU patients. The longest I've had a patient be in the NICU actually was 15 months.
Mm,
He was
wow.
calling me mama. So me and his mom would joke all the time, and he was a sweet little Caucasian baby.
Oh.
His family, he had been life flighted in from 3 hours away, and his family could only come in on the weekends.
Mm,
And I love that family, and I love that sweet baby. And
mm.
he's 20 today.
Wow.
But
Incredible.
anyway, so one of the tenets of family centered care is to start involving the family in taking up parts of the care as early as possible. So in the old days, like when my sister was in the NICU, it is true, families came in on the weekends, and then finally one Sunday they were there. You taught them how to do a bottle and change a diaper, and you're like, okay, bye. But I mean, really now, parents getting involved very early with the
Hmm.
care, especially you mentioned a baby that's may has been in the hospital a long time. A lot of times those babies will go home with oxygen, or they may go home with a stomach tube or G tube, or they may go home even with a tracheostomy for breathing. And the families are taught how to do that care now before they leave.
Okay.
And so we usually have like a transition program if they need a G tube, or if they're going to get a trach especially.
Hmm.
Well, they have to train to do the G2 feeds and train to take care of the tracheostomy before they go home.
Hmm. Hmm.
If they're going home with just NG feeds, we train them how to do that. And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
especially once they leave the really sick ICU side,
Hmm.
and they go to what we call the level 2 or more chronic care side, the parents almost are doing almost all the cares on that side. We're teaching them how to give the meds. They're comfortable picking up the babies. The babies usually don't have IVs anymore. They're comfortable changing the diapers. The room's all decorated. They got like mobiles, and you like they watching videos, even though we know they AAP says no videos, but I mean, anybody that's had a kid in the NICU a long time, they know that it's going to be a few videos
Yeah.
playing.
Yep. It
And so,
happens.
I mean, we gotta,
Yes.
and so I have two kids of my own. I always say, do as I say, not as I did, because you got to do what works for you.
Yes.
But anyway, so we do involve the families much earlier in the care, and we have what we call rooming in. So some of my NICUs actually had 24-hour rooms when they go to level 2, where the parents can stay all the time until the day they go
Oh
home,
wow. Okay.
which is
Okay.
just fantastic. There's
Mm-hmm.
some NICUs now where the parents have stayed every day since they were born, like in the same room that the mom delivered in. There are
Wow.
some NICUs like that.
Hmm.
And then
Okay.
other NICUs, even if they don't have that, we have what we call rooming in rooms. And so you're gonna go home maybe Friday, so you spend the night Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practicing.
Okay.
Most people get at least 2 nights, but if they need more,
Yeah.
we will do that. And they're in the room with the child.
Mm-hmm.
They can call the nurse,
Mm-hmm.
but at least it's just you, and you're not like looking up at the monitor all the time and looking for the nurses to come. We want to see how because we do want you to be empowered
Mm-hmm.
to take care of your baby and not feel like you have to come back to the ER for every
Mm-hmm.
spit up or every concern about an alarm.
Mm-hmm. 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 I think that is fantastic. It's
Yeah, it's
so
pretty
good to
nice.
hear the amount of support that families can have. And I know that there's going to continue to be advances as we go on and on.
Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
I appreciate everything that you have shared. And I
Yeah.
really, really appreciate this book. Everybody, if you know anyone who has a family member who's in the NICU, this
Yeah.
is an excellent book just to help get a sibling acquainted with that experience. And, it's a good way to help them learn a little bit about their baby
Yeah.
brother or their baby sister,
Yeah.
and be able to connect what they're seeing maybe in the pictures and the videos, and understand
Yes.
a little bit more about what's going on. So please
Yep.
support Dr. Terri.
Please support the book. And also I wanted to give a shout out to those authors out there who are trying to create books that have more diverse characters. I intentionally wanted to feature a physician that was African American. I wanted to feature a family that was African American, and I wanted to normalize the way we look in books, and that our hair is different, and we have all shapes and sizes and all different shades. And I can tell you one of my happiest days was when the color book for the book came out, and I got to get the Crayola colors of the real colors and pick which shade of brown I wanted to color mom, and which shade of brown I was going to color dad, and what color shade of brown that Dr. Terry was going to be. And
Mm-hmm.
because when I was growing up, I actually didn't have many books that featured diverse families. And somebody actually came up to me and said, Dr. Terry, I read your book. I loved your book. And the only person in the book that's white is the nurse. Like, and I'm like, yeah, imagine that.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
just like my whole life I've been reading books where, but I think it's just still new for people to see. So
Yeah.
it was fun for me to play with that. So looking
Yeah.
forward to
Yeah.
writing more children's books.
Yes, please
Um,
do. We're waiting to see what more comes from you. And to your point, I'm very, very glad, as you mentioned, a lot of times books feature one type of family, or, does not really
yes.
reflect what is there in America. And it is
Yeah,
nice for people to be able to see and feel connected with an experience, of a family that looks
exactly.
like them. And even
Yes.
down to having a black doctor. I spoke about this on a previous episode as well. Probably about
Yeah,
4% of doctors in America are African American. So it
right.
is important to be able to
Yeah,
reflect, and show this to our families as well. So
right.
so thank
Especially
you for
since NICU
highlighting that.
families. Yeah, especially since for Black families, preterm birth. I mean, we're 2 times more likely to experience a preterm birth.
Three
So
times.
that's a lot more big sisters and big brothers,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
families of color who may be navigating this journey. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is a book for everyone. And I hope it empowers families, and I hope it empowers siblings, and people get ideas for how siblings can be more involved
Mm-hmm.
and more present
Mm-hmm.
until their baby sister or baby brother comes home.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so, so much for sharing with us, Dr. Terry. Really appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
time. Really appreciate having you and your beautiful smile on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so flattered. I really, really appreciate the invite. And like she said, everybody go get the book. You can get it on Amazon.
Yes, yes, yes. And I will put all the links in the show notes, so
Okay.
you'll have those available. All
Okay.
right.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Have a good day, boo. Bye
Bye,
bye.
Dr. Boo.